Hey guys, we are back with episode 33 of the ASKJV Podcast. Today I'm answering questions about being a producer and musician, dealing with problem clients, and then also whether your editing is taking too long and what to do about it.
3, 2, 1. This is the ASKJV Show.
Our first question comes from Goblo. Hey Jordan, what instruments do you play, and how does this musical experience help you when producing albums and shaping your client's sound? You never talk about your favorite bands. Which are your favorites?
Yeah, cool question. I do play some instruments. So I play guitar mainly, can also play some bass just by extension, and also drums and like a tiny bit of piano too. And I do think that it has a big impact on the way I produce, and anyone who's an engineer or producer, having some musical ability or skill definitely pays off in the studio. I actually think, being able to play an instrument and having at least a little bit of kind of innate musical talent is way more of an asset in the studio as a producer or engineer than just the technical ability, because I really think that you can teach anyone, how to use a console or use Pro Tools or another DAW or learn how to do EQ or compressors, turning knobs and stuff. Pretty much anyone can learn how to do that stuff, but if you're not applying it with kind of a musical mind, that's what it's all about in the end. It's about the music and the songs, right? So, I always tell people who are interested in this, make sure you have an interest in music first and foremost. It's cool to have an interest in the technical side too, and I'm a little bit of a tech guy as well, and I like computers and stuff to a certain extent. But I think that the musical side is what really is the way bigger asset. And there's some exceptions, like Rick Rubin, old school producers like that who maybe aren't musicians themselves but are great producers, but I think that they're more the exception than the rule. I think that being a musician first and then getting into the studio side is kind of the more common path, and also you're going to have an easier time getting ahead in the studio as well. As far as my favorite bands go, good question. I've never been asked that. Let me think. I like a lot of the old classic heavy bands from early 2000s when I was coming up. So Thrice is one of my favorite bands. Bands like Every Time I Die, Norma Jean, Oh Sleeper. I like a lot of more poppy stuff too. I really like the band Pierce the Veil. They're kind of like more mainstream, kind of screamo or whatever, hardcore stuff. But I really like their blend of heaviness, but also very catchy melodic stuff. And I think the vocals are awesome on all their records. So those are a few of my top bands, and I also like some mainstream pop stuff too. Ed Sheeran. I'm a sucker for pop music as well. So those are some of my favorites.
Our next question comes from Matt. My question concerns customer relationship. How do you handle customers that keep requesting changes/corrections to their mixes? Do you have any advice on communicating with difficult customers? How do you handle charging for corrections? Okay, I know this is a delicate question, but maybe you could give some basic information/advice there on how you approach this.
Well, I think that one helpful thing in this area is setting some guidelines up front. So what I like to do is when I send the mixes to a band for approval and for notes, I like to say right up front, hey guys, take a few days to listen to this so that it's all sinks in. And also, when sending me back notes, make sure you only send me one consolidated list of mix notes. So in other words, don't, if the guitar player is the first one to hear it, make sure he's not sending you his notes, and then 2 days later, the drummer finally gets to hear it and he's sending his notes. Make sure to tell them, get together as a band first once everyone's had a chance to listen a few times, and then put together one master list of notes and then send it to me. And that way the revision process is going to be a lot smoother, because then you're not going to be getting a constant flow of changes, as new people are hearing it and getting ideas, right? And sometimes it's a conflict between members of the band. Maybe the drummer wants a louder snare and everyone else is fine with it. And that's something that should be worked out with the band or the artist first before they even come back to you. So just kind of setting those guidelines up front can help a lot. Otherwise, the time when I really cut off people for revisions is when I find that it's going on too long and you're starting to make changes that have no impact on the mix, or even worse, you're just going in circles, where like the revisions from the revisions for this week are basically undoing the revisions for the next week. For example, if the first set of mix notes, they say, turn everything else up, and then except the bass is fine, and then you do that, and then their next note is turn the bass up, you've just completely got back to square one, right? So if that starts happening, make sure you point that out to them. And often this is a result of them not actually having things resolved as a band, themselves. So when it gets to that point, just gently say, hey, personally, I feel like we're going in circles here, ever since the first couple revisions that we've done, nothing's actually improved. We're just kind of changing stuff for no reason. So sometimes just saying that and having the confidence to say that makes a big difference, and the band kind of realizes that you're right, and they'll usually go along with it. But those are my tips. It doesn't happen too often, but I know it can happen. So hopefully those things help.
Our last question comes from Spencer. You mentioned in episode 29 that it takes you 3 days per song when making a record. 2 for recording and 1 for mixing. How much of that time is spent editing / comping the recorded tape? I find myself spending 8+ hours editing and comping a song in full, and I have a suspicion I'm either over editing or not getting enough good takes on the recording day.
Yeah, I would say you're probably editing too much or not getting takes good enough in the recording phase. I would say, when I'm talking about 2 days to track a song and 1 to mix, that's editing is included in that too. I do a lot of editing as I'm going. So like after I track drums, I'm editing the drums for that right away usually, or maybe we'll track a whole album worth of drums, and then I'll spend 1 day or maybe 2 days editing all the drums for an album. And then same with vocals. Like usually vocals is the last thing we track. So the band leaves, and let's say it's a full album, it might take me 2 days to, edit and tune all the vocals, and then I'm on to mixing. But yeah, generally when I'm giving that guideline of 2 days per song to track and a day to mix, that's with editing included. So I'd say, yeah, you're probably bang on that you're maybe editing too slow. In that case, you can check out my hardcore editing course. That should help you with drum editing, guitar, bass, and vocal editing, just speeding up the workflow, focusing on what's really important. And then, otherwise you could be right that you're just not spending enough time in the tracking stage, getting way better takes. That's going to cut down your editing time in the end. So those 2 things. All right, thanks for watching, guys. If you want to get your question answered on this show, then make sure you go to AskJVPod.com and submit your question there. That's the best way to give the best shot that you're going to get your question on the show. We do our best to get as many on here as we can, but there's a lot in the queue, so make sure you get your question in soon if you want it on the show. If you're not on my email list and you're kind of discovering this for the first time, then go to hardcoremusicstudio.com. Right at the top there, you're going to see a link for a free mixing cheat sheet. Just click that. You're going to get the free cheat sheet there that's going to help you out with just starting points for EQ and compression in your mix. And then it's also going to give you a free bonus video and some other stuff as well. So make sure you check that out. And we had a good launch of the hardcore mixing course last week. We opened it up and got a bunch of new mixers in there. So really excited to see the results that these people are getting. If you didn't join the course, that's fine. As always, I'm always going to be sending out more free content and more free tips. You can follow along for as long as you want. And yeah, that's it for this week. Submit your questions, subscribe, like this, all that good stuff. I'll see you next time.